Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Table Talk with Queer Voices of Bhutan, recognizing motley lives in the month of Pride. And today I'm very proud to be presenting to you one of our greatest allies of the Bhutanese LGBTIQA+ community, Namgay Zam. So would you please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sanjay. I'm so glad to be here on your first episode of Table Talk. So as most of you would know, I am a journalist. I'm also an activist. I'm also a mental health advocate, and like Sanjay mentioned, an LGBTIQ+ ally for the longest. I think that's about, and I'm also a mother. Yeah, I think that would go for an introduction. What do you think?
Yes, very wonderful to hear, Ajum. So yes, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And to introduce myself, my name is Sangaladi and I will be your moderator for today. So yes, the first question that I have to you, to jump into the interview, the first question I have is, can you talk about your SOGI SC, what your SOGI SC is? And for those who are new here, the platform SOGI SC means sexual orientation, gender identity and expression. So yes, with that, please do go ahead.
Thanks, Sanjay. So I was assigned female at birth, so woman, and I identify as a cis woman, cisgender woman. So I have been straight my entire life. So that would be how I identify myself.
Yes, thank you very much for being comfortable enough to even talk about it, because for those who are out there who might not still question that gender is the same as sex, who says gender is male and female, for those them who still believe in that concept, I just feel like whenever we talk about SOGI SC, we create an advocacy around those kind of issues, which are very pertaining to the current status of the community. So that's why thank you so much for even being comfortable enough to talk about it, even though it might be sensitive. So yes.
No,
Moving.
I mean, that you asked Jesse, because it only happens that we ask this question to people from the queer community, and nobody from the cis population has asked this question. So it's interesting to have the table reversed and then to have us talking about it. So you think about it and think, interesting that I have to talk about my sexuality, which is taken for granted, right? That the fact that you're only male or female and you don't identify as anything else. So I'm glad that you asked me this question.
Yes, and we're always glad, if with your comfortability to talk about certain issues, because it's much needed. And moving on to the next question that I have for you is, what does being an ally mean to you? First of all, can you talk about how you feel as an ally?
So I don't think it was a conscious effort on my side. Sanjay, I never even called myself an ally. I just came out thinking, oh, I need to write about the queer community in Bhutan because they're not visible. I don't see stories about them. And I think my journey in Bhutan actually started, I think, with my work, trying to find out at that time, really nobody was visible except for Dishin Saldan, right, as a trans woman. And even the health ministry, they were doing this men having sex with men, MSM survey, basically to try and improve their outreach with HIV advocacy. And they weren't even using the terms LGBTIQ plus or queer or whatever. It was just MSM. So my journey really began then. I think it was around 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So after I started finding out, and it was also because I saw this LGBT Bhutan Twitter handle. I was like, what are these people? I didn't know that people were out there. So it was basically from a place of curiosity that I think I began my relationship with the queer community in Bhutan. So it didn't really start off as me going to my social media and announcing to the world that I'm an LGBTIQ plus ally. So I actually got the name of an ally from the queer community itself. So I didn't call myself an ally. And I think it was because of my work that they saw me as being an ally.
Oh, but would you identify yourself as an ally right now? Because even ally becomes a part of the community, and whenever it comes to community, the first and foremost thing is that you have to identify with it, because we cannot enforce it on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
Of course. No, I do now. I mean, after understanding, definitely. I mean, I wish I could identify as lesbian or non-binary, but unfortunately, that would be fake. So the only thing I can identify myself is as an ally, and definitely. And as the word itself means, I mean, it's somebody who aligns with you, is there, it's forming an alliance with the queer community. So definitely, I think after my initial work, it's really been getting deeper and deeper into the queer community and finding a lot of friends inside. So it's really been a journey into the community and being able to bring the voices of the community out on my platform, of course, with consent, right? So it's not like I talk to people, to my friends in the community, and I'm just like, oh, blabbing about it on my social media without consent. So for me, consent is really important, and the fact that I get the permission to share their stories, to share their photographs. So one of the first pieces of work I did was actually informal on my blog, which no longer exists. It was so long ago, but it was one of the founders of LGBT Bhutan, and he's out now. He's openly identified himself also, Kamadukchin. So it was a recorded conversation on this little Sony thing I had to record at Ambient Cafe. It was just an informal conversation, and he didn't really want to reveal himself because he didn't want to be known for his gender expression and more for his work. And he was really young at that point. So it really started with that conversation, the fact that somebody would agree to have a conversation with me. And so because he didn't give me permission to reveal who he was, that he hadn't come out to openly at that point. So we had that conversation, and I had a little bit of an understanding of where the community was, who could be in the community, what was happening in this invisible community, because it existed very much in Bhutan, but we didn't know, we couldn't see. I mean, somebody like myself didn't see it either. So it started from there, I think, and from there, then I mean, one thing led to another. So first, it was just about identification, about visibility. Then after that, it was really about the issues plaguing people, all of my friends who identified as queer. Then after that, it was advocacy. And then it was, then of course, we had, then, I mean, with my work very early on, it was decriminalization for me. I mean, I think I couldn't bear thinking that people who are just like myself were in a way criminalized just because of your sexual identity, just because of your gender, and only because we were ignorant about it, not because y'all were horrible people. It's not because the queer community, that really, I think, that really impacted me, affected me so much that was when my activism for the community began, because I was like, everybody deserves the right to live with dignity, and we are depriving a certain section of the Bhutanese population of that. And it just didn't sit right with me, because social justice is so important to me, and even gender equality. And when we talk about gender equality, people think in this very binary way where it's only male or female, you don't consider the other genders. So for me, because I've been so passionate about that all of my life, it was just natural for me that I would really take up this cause for the queer community as well. So then that's how it all happened, and here I am.
So much for sharing that. Listening more and more into your story, I see that how much you yourself has been a platform for other people to actually go and talk to, because you were not there to judge, you were not there to actually conform someone, but you were there to actually take into considerations their emotions, their feelings. So yes, so I think that's how even the communities feels comfortable with you talking to you, about issues around that. So yes, I think this the way you told your story, the way your story has been formed, the type of experiences you had is really wonderful. So yes, so thank you very much. So moving on to the next question. The next question that I have for you is: when you grew up, when you were growing up, what were the some of the perceptions that you heard, and what were the perceptions that you heard, and what was your perception of the queer community?
Growing up, I think the first thing I'm thinking is visually, you would see what the trans women in India, or what we call the hijras, right? So then I think that would be my first contact with the queer community. But that was seen, as we were growing up, it was seen as something not really natural, I mean, this is me at like what, 10 years old, 11 years old, watching all these Bollywood films and seeing them. And then I think maybe when I was a little older, I may have seen some drag queens in Hollywood films. But what was it was as if there was this sense of othering where, oh, like not so much like us, these people are just different. Not so much, but was I fearful? especially of the trans women, the hijras. Yes, because of the way they were portrayed, like they can curse you, etc. And then their curses are very powerful, and you have to treat that's the thing. I was so afraid of them that I would treat them respectfully, not like other people. So I remember going on the train trip to Goa, and they would just come in these huge groups of trans women, and they'd actually give blessings if you gave them money, and then they would curse you if you didn't give them money. So I was like, oh, I have to give them money. So it was a very superficial understanding, and I was fearful because I didn't know, right? The other, when you don't know the other, you're always fearful of the other. It's normal for one to encounter trans women on the trains. They'll come asking for money, and so I knew that I did not want to get them upset with me. So I was like, oh, have my money ready. I didn't want them to curse me. So that would be, I think, my first physical encounter with the trans community. But I remember feeling, what would be the word? Because I've always been a very empathetic person. So I could empathize with their plight at a very superficial level, where I felt sorry in a way. Why do they have to do this, or why? I mean, I'm sure for me it was. I mean, in my head, I remember a part of me thinking maybe this is natural, maybe this is not natural. A part of me not really understanding what it was, but really, but despite not understanding what it was, I could still empathize and say, no matter what it is, they deserve to be treated respectfully. So that was something. I mean, that's my own upbringing and my social conditioning. So after that, I went to a college called Leadership College for Women in Delhi, where it's a staunchly feminist, all women college, and that's where I saw my first lesbian relationships. So it was very interesting because you come in and there's no place for judgment because it's happening around you, and it's so everybody's like, oh yeah, this one is dating this one likes this, blah blah blah, and I mean, if you want to appear to be cool, you have to be accepting of it. So there was no room for, oh my God, is that natural? There was just like, oh, they're dating and it's kind of cool. So then the entry into it was not as difficult for most people, for me. So I think that would be then I was studying English literature where there's all this homoerotic love between women and women, men and men. So even the conversation was at another level of um, acceptance of the what was normal was different from what was normal outside of our college, right, in our lives. So from there I think I had that entrance, and I've my life. So even with then my years at college really just opened up my brain to, oh, okay, this is just natural. And but then the thing is, at that point we're like, oh, okay, they're in a relationship right now, and we think, oh, it's because maybe there aren't men in college, so then girls are dating girls. And then we're thinking, oh, maybe this is short term, and it won't go into, I mean, it won't develop into anything more serious than that. I mean, of course, that time we didn't have same-sex marriages, etc., etc. So then I came out of college, and then I came to Bhutan, and I forgot about it. All this lesbian relationship, blah blah blah. Then Dishan Saldon's story appeared in Quinsa, and it was the first time I was thinking, oh wow, okay, so
The perspective that you brought was very important. The way you've explored, and you weren't judgmental at first. You were actually saying, okay, that's quite normal to see. That's quite okay. Okay, that's something new, but I shouldn't be judging it. You're not conforming something here. You're not saying, okay, they should be like that. You're not, advocating for the wrong cause, but instead you are like open to certain issues. And that type of perspective is quite interesting to hear, because I thought at one point you might have been against, but and then you slowly, changed sides. But that was not the case. But I'm really happy to hear the different perspective, the diverse perspective that I from your story, which is quite inspiring as well. So yes, I'm really happy how you actually took your time to slowly understand how it is, and you actually allowed people to be themselves. So that kind of diversity is very much needed. So yeah. So moving back to the question, I would really actually like to know this, and for the clarification of the people who still are questioning, have you ever questioned your own sexuality or gender?
I think there may have been a point in time in college where I think a lot of girls, like I was saying, a lot of my friends were dating other friends, and I did question. And I was thinking, could I be attracted to women? And especially because men don't speak about it so openly, but women tend to find other women attractive too. So then when you find other women attractive, you think, oh, is that, am I bisexual? Like that was my question. Am I attractive in the sense not as in physically you are attracted to that person, but the fact that, oh wow, she's beautiful, or she's really charming, or wow, I like being with her, I like her company. Then you think, and then you hear about your friends experimenting, and then you think, would I mean, could I mean, if I found a woman attractive, could I take it to that next level where I could be in a proper relationship? So that kind of questioning, yes. But if I ever felt like, oh, am I not straight? Unfortunately, I always like to say unfortunately because I would have loved that experience. But unfortunately, I never veered into being bisexual or lesbian. So it just didn't like, I couldn't, for me, it's like how, you can't imagine kissing a guy, kissing a woman. Like, I can imagine kissing like another woman. It's like, okay, I'm only comfortable being attracted to men in that sense. So so yeah, so that kind of questioning, yes, like could I ever identify as that? Because there were also some women who were interested in me, so this is why the questioning happened. So when they were interested in me, was I a part of me would be nervous, but no fear, nervous, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I actually like the girl, but could I ever see myself having like a proper relationship with that person? So I think out of respect and like even knowing, acknowledging boundaries, I would think, no, this is not to go anywhere. So I need to like accept the fact that I'm just straight, and I need to let them know that I'm straight, and it could never really develop into something. So yes, at that point, just there was that question.
Oh, yes. So the reason I wanted to ask this question is because people everywhere these days are questioning, and they feel that a part of them who actually questions their sexuality is not good. But to normalize that kind of interest, to normalize themselves exploring, because they have to know and they cannot suppress it, because that's not something good. So to normalize certain things, I actually wanted to know your experiences, and thank you so much for sharing it, because I think it would really help someone out there. Yes,
I
yes.
think the environment needs to be there. I think at the time that I was in college, this was like 2004 onwards, the environment wasn't the same. I mean, people weren't out. There wasn't a lot of support for the queer community, and it was a different time. But right now, I think with the exposure that you have, social media, etc., it's just a different time. And if young people want to explore, I think you should explore. I mean, why not? I mean, you have this one life to do everything you want, so go ahead and explore.
Yes, yeah. A lot of people really need to hear that, because they feel like it's bad to explore, but they really do need to do that.
I think it comes from this place of shame revolving around sexuality, where you're not supposed to talk about sex, where you're not supposed to talk about. I mean, where do we come from, right? We come because we've had sex, right? And people need to accept that. I mean, everybody has this. There's this whole shame surrounding our bodily parts, our sexual organs, and I think we need to remove that. And I think one of the best places, I think some of the best advocates are actually people like yourself from the queer community, because there's this, because you're not restricted by the boundaries of normal heterosexual conversations. That I think that the community could play a lead role in educating everybody among your age groups as well when it comes to this, so that there's this the shame disappears and there's a healthy conversation around it. Yeah, so definitely I think it's great to explore and understand your sexual identity.
Yes, yes. It is very much needed. Yes, because I think without the existence of certain entities that are very much pertaining to the queer community, I think the movement itself wouldn't be that effective. But I think when I was younger, I was always happy with the fact that Pride Bhutan and Queer Voices Bhutan did exist. Okay, they're there, so if in case I ever come out, I can just go there. So, I think that it was really important for me. So I have one last question for you before we end. How can someone who is new to the concept of LGBTIQA plus become more sensitive and aware of the queer community? Become more sensitive in approaching towards the queer community. What are some of the things that you would, how you say, advise them?
I think first educate your, because experiences of friends that they have friends who are queer, but they've never really understood them or been kind to them. So everything is approached from this perspective of whether you're male or female, the binaries, right? So then I think you need to really learn that you don't know enough. just watching Ellen doesn't make you queer literate. You need to go beyond that. You have to do the work. I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, you put so much work into making a friendship work. You have to extend this to the queer friends too, because they come with a different level of complexity where where they don't have the kind of privileges you've had as a cis woman or a cis man, and they may be carrying certain traumas. Because their life experiences are so different from yours, you need to extend a lot of grace, a lot of understanding. So how can you do that? You can only do that when you educate yourself, and you need to, I mean, read up on what it means to be LGBTIQ plus, what constitutes harassment, what may be you. For instance, suppose you have one of these toms, right? Who we like we call them in Bhutan, and then you are one of his male friends, and you think it's funny to lift their shirt up, to see, oh, do you have boobs or not? And I think that's incredibly disrespectful. But in the Bhutanese community, they think it's fun, and even the ones who identify as doms, like, oh, we're going to take it because we're cool about it, so it's not okay, and it constitutes harassment. And I think you need to understand that, and if you want to respect your friend who is queer, then make sure you are literate enough to bring that respect to the table. Don't think that your notion of respect is adequate enough in that relationship. So I just want to, speaking from my own experiences and the experiences of my friends, I want to share this with people who may be friends with the queer community or want to learn more about the queer community. There's so much information online. You can find it on Queer Voices of Bhutan. You can find it on Pride Bhutan, LGBT plus Bhutan. So just find a platform that could educate you. Even the terminology. I mean, you identify as they, so I'm definitely not going to call you he because that's your pronoun, right? So it takes. I mean, some people are like, it's so confusing. It's too much. It's too much work. Yeah, but if you want to respect that community and you want to say that you know the community and you interact with them, then I'm sorry, it doesn't come easy. You have to earn that place. Like I earned that place as an ally, right? I mean, you guys wouldn't be calling me an ally if I continued calling you he and disrespected your identities, etc. Right? So if you want to equate yourself with the community, know how to equate yourself with the community. Yeah. I'm sorry, that may come across as harsh, but it's the truth.
Yes, it is the truth. No, Ajwa. It's very much needed in the present status of the world, because they feel like that's just because they don't understand, it doesn't mean that someone else would not be harmed. They would be harmed of your when you don't understand the terms. But one of the important thing is that you don't have to learn everything today. You can take your time,
Exactly.
and you will make mistakes, definitely, because as someone who identifies as they, it's very extremely difficult for people to actually call me that. So I've been called he many times, but I still say, okay, you can take your time. So knowing that is also very important. But yes, what you said, respecting, having the boundaries, respecting someone's consent before you actually ask them, okay, and the questions that can be sensitive when asking. So those things are very important in these conversations. So yes, thank you very much for those wonderful answers, because given giving the perspective of an ally when it comes to queer community, it shows that, okay, you still have your sexuality, you still have your identity, and ally doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be part of the community. You have a very very diverse perspective on your own. So that's why we really wanted you to be part of this interview. So thank you very much. So do you have any last words before we end?
Appreciate you saying, you don't have to know everything on day one. I agree. I'm still learning every day, like the SOGSC term, I got to know only about like a year ago, despite having worked with the community for so long and what it means, what it stands for, etc. And I think it's a learning process. Like if you want to be friends with people who are queer, it's a lifelong learning process. I think as you discover yourself, even for us, it's we're also part of the journey of discovery and also the journey of validation and respect. Yeah. Now, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you very much for being a part of this. So yes, and that was Namgay Zam with Queer Voices of Bhutan for Table Talk, the very first episode. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for joining, and see you soon. Bye bye.